Hello, hello. Testing the mic. That doesn't seem to be working. Let's see. Okay, you can hear me. Good. Can you hear me now that I'm actually talking? Okay. Okay. Because I have had so many problems with YouTube or with YouTube Live in the past, and it's not giving me any indicators whatsoever that my audio is working. Normally in Zoom and stuff, you have the little border that lights up, and here there's just nothing. And I learned in the past that if I don't set it right when I go live, I have not found a way to change it once I have gone live, and I just have to start an entirely new live stream. So that's exciting. Okay, well, awesome. Thank you for everybody that is here currently. Are there any questions out of the gate that I can answer? I suppose the other thing you can also, if you want, if you are willing to share and have it shared on this format, um, you can give a little bit of information about your system before asking your question so that I understand the relevancy and the context. I'm glad you're here as well, and I'm glad you enjoy the videos. I hope they are helpful. That is the main goal after all. But yeah, so 25th, what is the question I can help with? Hey, Anubia. I don't do the live streams very often, so I'm glad you could make this one. So yeah, 25th, you said you had a question. I'm assuming you're probably typing it up now, and I should just leave you be. If we run out of questions, I do have a couple of things that I can ramble about because I can always ramble. So we'll see. Okay, well, it doesn't look like there's any questions popping in just yet. Um, so, and as I say that, uh, let's see. The tendency to intertwine my world and its power system as one. It's actually thinking how your system works great for hard soft world building as well as rational irrational. Yeah, no, the connection to world building is absolutely something that I want to explore more in the future. It's something I've kind of been doing. Um, it's something I do kind of automatically, and I have also been trying to make sure, not so much that I stay in my lane, so much as I develop my lane before I start deviating on all of the random stuff the other random stuff I also want to talk about. Um, and that is one thing I want to tie into is a lot of the processes we do with the magic building can work just as well for world building, which is really nice, actually. And you can apply some of that rational, irrational stuff to that as well. Okay, so Anubia, I recently watched your video on hard magic. Are you planning on doing a video on rational magic systems? Eventually, yes, I absolutely want to do that. One of my next one is probably going to be on how to create soft magic systems. So doing sort of the counterpoint to the video that just came out recently. So after that, there might be some other random stuff that I fill in. I've got some more spells and specialist stuff that's going to be coming up. And then I do want to talk specifically about rational and irrational. Yeah. And then potentially, as I develop my thoughts on it and get some of the concepts more refined, there might be videos on each of the four main types. So talking a bit about the pros and cons specifically in a little more detail about a hard rational system and what to do to make sure that you have both aspects and things like that. So yes, I am planning to do a video on that. And so you guys know, when this video is done, it is going to be it will be available on my Patreon. Um, I'm wanting to shoot to get more content over there for people. Um, and I'm still trying to figure out how I can deliver value to people, because that's my big thing. I don't ever want to not be delivering value, especially if anybody is giving me any kind of money. I want to make sure everybody's getting their money's worth. Song Day current story has an Odyssey similarity. Okay, that sounds interesting. 25th, one of my power systems is hard rational. And oh, it's a tradable commodity. Okay, have you considered a video on power economy and how abilities drain a user? I'm going to write that down as a specific video, because that does sound interesting. So, because there's a couple of ways that we could look at power economy, right? There is, well, I suppose there's power structure and then there's power economy. Power economy would require some kind of transference or exchangeability, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually changing off the magic, because we could talk about power economy based on essentially using different forms of magic as a trade craft, which earlier somebody was asking, actually it was you, 25th, you were talking about using that for world building. That's one of the things I really like to do, is once you find a role or capability within the magic, explore how somebody might turn that into an actual profession. What would that look like? Because then there's a magic power economy right there, in terms of hiring and trading and training these people with these specific abilities. So power economy video and consume. I'm gonna put a note about consumable magic source. Mistborn, because that is something that is very interesting. That is a strange form of that is a very intelligent form of a renewable magic source, because on an individual level, when we're talking about Mistborn, who if it, there are people who haven't read it, people consume metals and then they burn it within themselves to produce the magical power. So the source, I can be internal, external. I say it's external because they're a means of cutting people off from their supply, but it's an interesting form of renewable. And because it's an external source, that does factor into power dynamics and actual economic setups within the world, and can rapidly devolve into whole aspects of your world building. So I'm glad you're doing a kind of consumable power source for that, because there's so many applications. In fact, one of the things that people run into a lot with longer series or yeah, longer series is more where you see it is the power creep, right? Where my character is getting more and more capable. So how do I continue to challenge them? And when you have something like that, when you have an external source, that gives you lots of options to cut people off from their power, which then allows you all kinds of interesting stories where they're a normie now, and they have to cope and deal with these situations, or they have to regather resources, or they have to retrain based on now that they have a different resource that works in a slightly different way. There's lots of stories that can be told there, so you can keep your highly competent characters while still challenging them in new and fun ways. There's lots of fun stuff to do about that. Um, yes, be sure to uh, like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Thank you, 25th. As a song day, video idea. Um, oh, that could be really fun. Um, I've I've had some thoughts about some stuff like that, and I would love to do that more if people are comfortable with sharing. Like one of the things I actually have at one of my higher tiers. Sorry for my patrons who are coming in because you already know this, but I have two low end tiers and two high end tiers. The two high end tiers focus more on the coaching side of my stuff, and at the high end, you get access to a archive of coaching sessions that I have done with people, and they've been okay with it going up on Patreon. And I've got a couple going up there. I've got a couple up there, and I'm hoping to grow that library. But yeah, I do like that idea. I wasn't prepared with a notebook because I was supposed to answer your questions, and then you guys are just giving me ideas for my stuff, which I am very grateful for. I don't know that I am delivering you value though. I suppose you want this stuff, but let's see. So get a patron's magic, then dissect and break live. That could actually be really fun as a live thing. Um, okay, so friend is a gamer. If you're gonna go throw blood, if you're gonna throw blood magic into your system, you should know expectations that come with that. Yeah, there are tropes that exist within magic that are important to know. I really hope it muted that. Sorry. Uh, so there, I don't know. So the follow-up question is that if are there stronger tropes tied to blood magic than other types of magic? Um, I don't know that they're stronger, but they do come. Hmm, I don't know that they're stronger, but when you're dealing with tropes of pretty much any kind, you need to be aware of the attitudes and concepts that go with it. Because if you highlight it as one of your features, if you highlight it as one of your features without immediately subverting it in that same highlight, people are going to come in with one expectation. So if I say that if I'm doing a story that's a wizarding school that predominantly studies blood magic, and that's all I say, people are going to come in expecting a lot of the aspects of the blood magic trope to be true. Now, if I have the caveat where it's blood magic that does X, or um, it's a magical school, a, a school where people study magic that is fueled by their own blood, there I'm starting to subvert it a little bit. Just by saying that, I'm giving some indicators that it might not have all of the sinister tones and all of the manipulation and control that's there, and I'm just using blood as the price of the magic. So there's expectation management there, and that's true with anything. Because if I said I was going to do a Avatar: The Last Airbender like elemental system, that comes with some connotations of that high fantasy setting. If I then put it in a modern world or a sci-fi setting or some, or really divorce it from a lot of those mentalities, I told you it was going to be Avatar: The Last Airbender, and then I'm changing a bunch of things away from it. Not necessarily a bad thing, but trying to prep some of that. Now, saying something like I'm doing an elemental magic system in space, you're kind of breaking that. You're breaking that expectation right out the gate. Now, blood magic, to answer your core question, I don't know that it's stronger. I would say that well, I was about to say I wouldn't call it stronger. I would call it more cohesive, but depending on how you want to interpret it, that could be stronger. It's more consolidated. Blood magic has only been explored in a couple of very specific ways so far. So the presentation and the concept people have of it is pretty solid, whereas with a lot of other things we understand that it could be a broader spectrum. So yeah, I still want to say it's more consolidated, which I guess would say it's stronger. It's not strong. It's not, that doesn't make it harder for you to break. It just means that expectations are more narrow without you making that clear. So that was me rambling for a while on that. Let's see, magic system. Want it to be fairly rational. Several magic types effects that are not very connected. Would connecting them through concepts work, and what other ways are there to make a rational system? Yes, you can absolutely connect them through other concepts. You can, that's where the ideas of themes and mediums can be really valuable, because even if a pattern doesn't exist, you can establish a pattern by connecting it to similar types of effects, similar materials, similar behaviors. You can fabricate that structure around it. I mean, if you look at Mistborn, going back to that one, because it's a really strong one, right? He consolidated that around metal. Now, you could do something similar where you have a little grouping of effects that are kind of random, but you say these are all done using metal as part of the ritual. And then there's a whole different class of effects that are done using wood as part of the ritual, and another one that is done by using bone as part of a ritual. You're automatically building this kind of triangular structure between there. And with the groupings, that gives more rationality so that in the world, when I see somebody performing a ritual, I can look at the components they're using and the layout of the ritual and rationally anticipate what it is they're doing. And that is a way you can kind of artificially make it more rational. The other things you can do to make it more rational, it's Brandon Sanderson is super good at this. And really what he does is he takes a core concept and he breaks it down and kind of looks at what determines quality on execution of this. A great example is it's a standalone novel called The Rhythmatist, and it is chalk and geometry magic. And in there, one of the things that they can do is if they use the chalk and they draw a sinusoidal wave, that's basically a bolt of energy that shoots off and can hit your opponent's chalk defenses and their chalklings and stuff like that. Now, he looked at that and said, okay, that's a basic concept. What are the variables I can tweak to change the quality of this action? And he's like, well, it's a sinusoidal wave, so I can change the amplitude. And the higher the amplitude, the more powerful, uh, and I think the faster it moves. I don't remember exactly how he had it, but he had the amplitude as one factor. He had the period of the sinusoidal wave, so how far apart the peaks were. And then there's just the overall quality of execution. Do I draw a really smooth, consistent sinusoidal wave, or is it variable, right? So with those factors, he added little knobs and buttons that can be poked and turned, and and if you tie those to specific effects, then it becomes rational. Like maybe what he wanted to do instead is say amplitude of it is knockback power, So if I have really high amplitude and it hits the opponent's defenses or the chalkling, it knocks them back away from me. So when something's getting close, I focus on really high amplitude attacks. Whereas if I do the sinusoidal one or the period, the the smaller the period, so the closer the peaks, the faster it moves. That right there starts making it into a more analytical, rational system. And then if you can then extrapolate some of those concepts in other directions. So maybe it's not a true sinusoidal wave, but there's odd periods and pauses within the structure, and that starts having effects. It's breaking things down into smaller pieces and then connecting each piece to an element of the effect or the magic. And that's a really great way to go when building rational systems. Uh, 25th, have it literally consumable. It's called spice. Excellent. Inspired by chemistry. Awesome. Food chemistry, organic, inorganic. Great. I love it. Okay. Uh, Lionel, no, you're good. Just I'm glad you're here. Um, Thank you for being here. Not anything else I think you can do. I mean, you're already um one of my biggest advocates like on Reddit, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Like it helps so much. And I appreciate all of you guys being here. I really do. Okay, so how I got around the power creep is that my concepts are okay. You got around it by there's divine power behind the powers that are seen that people don't necessarily know about. And okay, uh, yeah. And so when I'm talking about the power creep, I'm more talking about things like you see in Dragon Ball Z is the most notorious example of this, right? Of I just dealt with the strongest person on the planet and they need a new threat. And they're like, okay, well, there's somebody who's stronger and they're the strongest person in the galaxy. And now they're the strongest person or in the solar system. Now it's the strongest person in the galaxy. And they just keep upping the power level more and more to ridiculous amounts because their characters are getting more capable. They raise their capability to meet this new threat, and now everything below is trivial. And that's not always true. It's fun to revisit some of the old stuff and find ways to make it more challenging. Because think about how they defeated them and change it up. So, looking at Dragon Ball Z, early on, Goku has to deal with Piccolo, right? But most of these conflicts, not all, but most of the conflicts are like one on one. It's a single antagonist. So if you have something similar in your story, you start having it where the people who they have theoretically surpassed in power start ganging up on them and attacking them all at once, drawing them into elaborate and well thought out traps. All of that kind of stuff is very interesting. In fact, there's oh, I would have to look it up, but there's some fun D&D stories out there where there's a GM who was notoriously known for his kobolds, where their like level 20 parties would get annihilated through these chambers of doom that these kobolds, which I think are like CR one quarter, they're supposed to be multiple of them against level 1 heroes, but because these kobolds were intelligent with how they set things up, his players were terrified of running into these low level threats. See, like all your videos. I'm glad. I'm really glad. Uh, are there other videos on soft, hard, irrational, and rational magic systems you recommend? Um, if anybody else has suggestions, please do share them. I am not familiar with a ton, and at least not that talk about it the way I do. You can get some good information about the more standard concept of hard and soft, which relates back to Brandon Sanderson's essay on the laws of Sanderson's laws of magic with his first law. So how most people understand hard and soft magic runs on a diagonal across my quadrants. I haven't seen a ton of other people talking about those 4 quadrants. You can go to Mythcreants, Mythcreants, and they have some stuff where I think they call it esoteric, but they will talk about rational and esoteric magic. They're actually where I initially got the idea for that second axis. That's where everything clicked into place for me. They've got some really good stuff. They've got some really good information over there. I haven't read their content in a while, but when I last read it, they had some stuff on that, and their stuff is usually pretty good. Um, yeah, there's a yeah. So I would check out Mythcreants. Hello Future Me has some things on that as well. And he's if you haven't seen if you are watching my videos and his channel hasn't popped up, I shame on the algorithm. Um, because his stuff pops up when I go back and watch my own videos for quality, and because I apparently just like to hear myself talk. But if you haven't seen his stuff, Hello Future Me has some good stuff. Um, the Tale Foundry, or is it the Story Foundry? I think it's the Story Foundry. I don't know if they talk. I don't remember if they talk specifically about magic systems, but they have a lot of really good conversations about storycraft and tropes and all of that kind of stuff. Highly recommend those. And if you need more information about the Sard, if you need more information about the soft, hard, irrational, rational magic systems, let me know because I can do more videos on those. I would be happy to do more videos on those. I just want to make sure that I am answering. I want to make sure I know what information you need, and I will try and address that for sure. Okay, so Kit says suggestions for a magic system based on superstition. There is no magic, but people believe there is and are superstitious. Post-apocalyptic world. Theme is science thinking is easily forgotten. Okay. I hope this doesn't upset anybody, but a good way to do that is to take what we know of our world and then go back and look at religious texts, folklore, and mythology. And because that's what those are, is they were lacking understanding of aspects of our world and built their own theories and explanations for how it worked. So if you want to do something similar in your story, start by consuming some of that content. That way you can see a bit of how it works and some of the rationale that people have. That a lot of times it's personification, um, and anthropomorphizing concepts because that's just how we think. We think it's got to be another reasoning being that intentionally did this kind of stuff. So consume some of that content, study some of it, then take the concept that you want the superstition to be based off of and create gaps in the knowledge. So let's say there is a machine, not even necessarily a machine. Okay. Let's say that there is a stockpile of uh, of PLA, which is a thermoplastic used in 3D printers. So you can melt it down, shape it, and melt it down and shape it over and over again until it starts to degrade. That is unlike anything that you're going to see in nature. So if you have that, there's the stockpile of this stuff that's in these spools, these just rings and rings of this material. Start taking away the information. How would people view it if they weren't familiar with plastics? How would they how would they think of it if they weren't familiar with 3D printing? Maybe it's our world, but just like further in the past, and they're like, this is a plastic, but I don't. This is a plastic, but we don't understand how they made it, and we don't understand its intended use. Superstitions can start to arise. Usually, you want bigger gaps of knowledge for it to really turn into true superstition, because the less context you have, the more you have to fill in the gaps, and the more you fill in the gaps, the easier it is to go afield from the truth. So that's kind of the process I would recommend for that. Uh, does that make sense? I hope that helps. So Anubia recommended Marinin. Is that a separate YouTuber? I may have to check that out. Marinin. Yeah. Hello Future Me has a lot of really good videos. Like I said, there aren't currently many people talking about the hard soft, rational, irrational the way I do. And you can argue that's because I just needed to be special. I don't know. I am hoping it starts to catch on, and because I find it to be a very useful structure. I don't know. Maybe it'll catch on, and then there will be other uh, YouTubers exploring that concept, which would be awesome. Okay, so an idea I've been thinking about was a professor in necromancy starting his first year, trying to move away from the stigma of the art. I've not tried to work this one out. Um, I'm not sure what your question is there, Song Day. Let's see, starting his first year and trying to move away from the stigma of the art. If you're looking at like how to tell that story, um, again, I would try and find periods of history that are similar. I wouldn't necessarily want to jump to, hmm, my historic knowledge is not great. It's one of my big regrets is part of me wishes I had been more into writing as I was going through school because then I would have cared a lot more about things like geography and history. And I'm sure that hurts people that I'm saying that. When I was in high school though, I didn't care much and now I regret it. If I had that concept of all of this is going to help me with world building, more would have stuck. I'm sure there are some examples where there were things that were kind of frowned upon and then knowledge came forward. Even looking at, actually, you could probably just look at medical history and maybe find some things. I'm sure, I wonder if there was a phase when people first started doing dissections and anatomies, which I'm sure there's a lot of stuff where, and not all of it was unfounded, where locals probably started viewing doctors as ghouls and immoral because uh, they were desecrating graves to cut open the human body, and it wasn't natural and it wasn't okay. Um, and to a certain extent, they were right. Grave robbing became an industry in that era of medical discovery because people would pay a lot for cadavers, and they just wouldn't ask questions about where they came from. So you might look at that, and it might be something similar where there have been some new discoveries about the fundamental aspects of necromancy, and that's what has changed. So a fundamental shift has occurred. Your character is on the forefront of that change, but they're still having to deal with all of the locals and all of the new incoming students, and possibly still some of the other faculty who still view it in this old light. Um, in fact, that could actually be a fun thing if there is a more modern name for the art, but everybody else keeps calling it necromancy. It's like, it's not necromancy, it's this. Um, that might be a way to do that. I'm not quite sure what your question was, but hopefully that helps with anything you were stuck with. Um, all right, so let's see. Get inspired, Tail Foundry. I really need to watch more Tail Foundry. There's the stuff I've seen is really good. Uh, okay, can you make categorical or even descriptive differences for soft rational and soft irrational to help solidify these ideas? Um, oh, can I? Okay. Yeah. So I'm taking that as a suggestion for something that I could use to help make that a little better known, and that is definitely part of it. Something actually. So here's a question for you guys. Something I've been thinking about for a while. I have the one video that is how to structure your magic like Allomancy, where I did a pseudo breakdown of Allomancy, talking about where it was hard, soft. I looked at the blueprint, and then I talked about how he did the push pull and he did the quadrants, right? And that's really the core structure of Allomancy that you can easily duplicate. Would it be useful to just have some videos where I take something like Alien, the movie, or Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I break it down, I explain the blueprint, and uh, explain some of the other aspects of the limitations, and even have a section where I talk about if you wanted to deviate, here's some things you could change to lead to a completely different system or application. Would that be of interest? Because if I started doing that for a bunch of things and made sure I hit some soft rational, some soft irrational, that would probably help people understand the distinction. Um, okay. Yeah, that's been on my list of videos to do, and I don't know why I have been hesitant about it. But I have. I've been really hesitant to do that for some reason. Uh, oh, okay. I see. Just shooting the necromancer idea at me. I appreciate it. Yeah, there's definitely some interesting stuff that you could do with that. Outlier data points. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I will definitely I will start formulating that better in my head as to how I can do that. Because I have a number of examples that I've used in some of my presentations at conferences and stuff like that, and I could I could walk through those for sure, and even start doing some new ones. So, okay, cool. Do we have any other questions so far? Because I think I'm caught up on the comments, and I'm not seeing another question. As if not, um, okay. Well, thanks so much for stopping by, 25th. We'll see you around. Thank you so much. Okay, so one of the things that's been on my mind lately is I've been poking at brainstorming, um, like basically stage two. When I talk about the 7 stages of building a magic system, stage two is idea generation, and uh, I got some good feedback. I am working on. Um, I haven't announced this broadly. I've talked about this a little bit on Patreon. Part of it is because I don't know how long it's going to take for me to actually get it ready. But I am putting together a video course on how to build a magic system that's going to do a whole bunch of information, walk you through the 7 stages, give you exercises and stuff along the way. And I'm working through that with some people, getting some feedback. And in fact, even uh, Ina, who's here right now, and I'm always worried I'm going to mispronounce your name. Anyway, she asked some good questions about basically when and how to get into the brainstorming idea generation process, because it's pretty clear when you have a blank slate, right? And you have nothing to work with. You need to do idea generation. And the longer I go, the more excited I get, the less good I talk. Um, get to the point where I just there's a T-shirt that I really want that says some people have a way with words, others not have way. And when I get too excited about this stuff, I not have way no more. So, but when you don't have any material to work with, that's obviously a stage that you need to do some idea generation, right? Because you need some ideas to work with. But there are other points when the brainstorming might be useful. If you already have a bunch of stuff, either just a bunch of ideas or you've already gone through part of the process and are doing more definition, you have more world building done. A lot of times it's not so much a decision to go back and do more brainstorming and idea generation, it's a need to address a problem you're having. That's usually, at least for me, that's how I end up brainstorming again. Because if things are flowing smoothly, I don't need to do idea generation. Um, it's more there to help address a problem and to fill in gaps. So the problem might be as simple as I have done something in my story or I've done something with my magic system and it feels really generic and I don't like it. Now, there's a caution with that because as I like to say, creativity is in combination and distinction is in the detail. If you're not at a detailed level yet in your story and with describing your magic system, hold on to it because it might get better once you explore some of the nuance and some of the detail. If you are at the detail level and it's feeling too generic, too similar to something else, or you just don't like it, then that's an entry point for you to do some brainstorming. And there you can focus specifically on that aspect and start coming up with new options. Or maybe there's just a gap where you've got things mapped out and you know I want a weakness of some kind here, or I want to have some sort of underground illegal movement around the use of magic, or even a combination of the two. I want an illegal organization that focuses on exploiting a weakness in the magic system. You don't have it, and idea generation is where you go to find it. So that's really when you want to go into brainstorming is when you're stuck, you've stumbled across a gap in the structure that you're building, just a gaping hole in the tapestry of the landscape or some kind of metaphor imagery stuff that I am not doing well on the fly. But then you do idea generation to figure out what you want to put there. Or there's a problem and you're not immediately seeing a solution to it, then you do idea generation for the solution. um, because yeah, I was thinking about that more this morning, and those are the main ways I see leading into idea generation and brainstorming. If you aren't facing any of those situations, you don't have a blank slate, you aren't facing a problem, you haven't found a gap, then idea generation just for the sake of idea generation isn't really gonna do much unless you're specifically wanting to make things more creative or more unique, but then you're back to that sort of gap problem area. So yeah, if you don't have one of those things, you probably don't need idea generation at that time. Okay, here's a question. As somebody who just throws ideas until they work, what are your thoughts for those of us that are interested in structure, but just throw it out completely when we're writing? Um, what do you mean you throw it out completely when you're writing? Like you try and do an outline and then you just find yourself not following the outline? Is that what you mean? Okay, yeah. Uh, do you enjoy the structuring? Like, do you enjoy the outlining process? No. Okay, well then that makes this easy. Then you are then for you specifically, Song Day, you're gonna get a little snippet of free coaching here. Is to then worry less about the structure. So there's a lot of things with writing that people say you have to do, and to a certain extent, I think it's true, but it doesn't have to happen in a specific order. So synopsis, outline, draft, edit, and feedback, right? Those are 5 things I feel you need. If you want the best possible story you can have and you want to be able to easily get people excited about it. Those are 5 things you need. You don't necessarily have to go in that order. So for you, it may be about writing a big expansive draft and then coming back and imposing the structure on it so you know what to cut, what to keep, and what to enhance. So, I mean, that's what discovery writers, not all discovery writers, some discovery writers just spew it all out and then just do very little shaping, um, which there are people that enjoy that. I mean, it's all about finding the readers that like your style. Uh, but if you want it to have a more structured feel, then I would apply the structure after when you're trying to do the editing and enhancing. That might be one thing for you to do. Another thing you could do is do a higher level structure, because rather than trying to get beat by beat, chapter by chapter written out, maybe just focus on some of the major plot points and then let yourself wander between them. So you have decided that the main plot is the hero overthrowing a tyrant, right? We've got evil king overlord that needs to be disposed of. So final conflict there is going to be between the hero and the defeat of the tyrant, right? We know we've got that. And then using whatever story structure you want, 3-act structure, 7-point structure, you can pick some other points where I want them to face the king, fail, and have to flee. Or I have this part over here where they discover a secret that will lead to their success against the tyrant. And then you have kind of these points on the map, and you can just let yourself wander between them. And as you're getting too far afield and you're just like, where is this going? You can look at the next plot point you have identified and say, okay, I'm just going to wander vaguely in that direction until I find my way there. Um, so that's what I would suggest for you. And this applies, and what I'm saying here about the order applies to a lot of things. So I'm really big on uh, finding what works for you because everybody's a little different. And in fact, if you guys aren't familiar with them, I've been getting more into the Clifton strengths or the Gallup strengths, depending on how you know them. I've been finding them very interesting as I've been getting more into those. I've been taking the Strengths for Writers course with the Better Faster Academy, um, and it has been very interesting. But turns out one of my higher strengths in the top 10 is individualization, which is about finding what makes people different. And I think that's a big part of why I'm like, no, you need to find the way that works for you. My point is, I'm going all over the place with even with the 7 stages. I have them numbered 1 through 7 because that's the order I go through. That doesn't mean it's going to be the order you go through. Um, so it's about finding what works for you and what the needs are of your current situation, which may vary from story to story, game system to game system. It's it can be kind of frustrating that there's not just one process you can go through every time and trust the result. Um, but at the same time, when you let go of that, it's easier to focus on finding the one that works for this situation. And that's kind of pot kettle black there because I'm not always the most adaptable. I'm not necessarily the best at changing course fast. That's one of the things I'm working on. Okay, so Ellen Brock has great videos on 4 types of writers, not just panners, plotzers, but also intuitive and methodological. That sounds good. Ellen Brock, huh? Yeah, I'm very interested to check that out. Methodological. I can spell. Because assuming that is what it sounds like, that makes perfect sense. So what I'm talking about with that kind of signposting and those plot points, that would be a the methodological pantser, because you are applying a loose structure and then giving yourself the freedom to discover and wander between the points, um, as opposed to fully intuitive where you just go and just it all comes pouring out and then you clean it up later, or don't, depending on your style of story and writing. I hope that helps. Do we have any other questions? If you can't let it, okay, it sounds like you need a little bit of structure then. Yeah, try that. So if you find yourself repeatedly breaking away from the structure, um, try and use a structure that gives you more freedom. You don't need to throw the structure out entirely, but back off on the level of detail. Is the level of detail and nuance of the structure. That's what I would do. So yeah, any other questions about your guys' story? Any questions about any of my other videos? Any questions about what I what I do for fun? I mean, like I don't. I'm I'm here to talk to you guys. Uh, and down the line, I do want to do more of these live events. I don't necessarily want them all to be Q&As. I'm thinking about setting up a Discord server or something like that, which gives me different forms of anxiety just thinking about it. But somewhere where we can just chill and hang out. We don't even have to be writing. Um, so like I really like VR games, virtual reality games, and I'm wondering if there's a way that I could have. I wonder if there's a way that I could have like a Discord feed in the corner of my vision. Um, I'm sure I could do it with an audio chat so that I could hear people talking, and that could be fun. So I could be playing VR games, maybe even streaming it while we just chat and BS about stuff. I don't know. I'm just throwing out random thoughts now. Yeah. Any other questions? Song day, you're gonna take the necromancy idea and write that story? Yeah, that do it. Do it. Thank you, Lionel. I will definitely let Rachel know because she was pretty nervous to come on to Spells and Specialists, nervous and excited. Um, I'll be sure to let her know that you enjoyed it. Okay, so just more content on rational, irrational. Okay, yeah, that's definitely something I want to get to. Part of the problem I'm having is it's a time issue. So there's a lot of these things I want to talk about, and then I get down to do my next video. I'm like, well, which of these things do I want to do? Because there's more magic system there's more I want to add to the Make It Fresh series of like how to make necromancy fresh. I want to do how to make blood magic fresh, going back to what Ina was asking about. Um, and it's yeah. Well, you'd love to see an archaeologist on Spells and Specialist. If you know one, feel free to send them my way, or towards Lovist, and I will keep an eye out for archaeologists. That definitely would be interesting. I could probably ping some of the people I know in the podcast circles. Maybe they know someone. Uh, how are my stories going? Okay, yeah. So I don't talk about this a ton on the channel, really. Um, I am currently pretty much exclusively focused on the fiction, or not the fiction, on the nonfiction. Not halfway, guys. Not halfway. I'm currently exclusively focused on the nonfiction because I was so most of my story stuff is just conceptual in my head. I might end up doing an outline or two. I have written several novels, but really what happened is I've been working seriously on writing for oh 12 years now. And by serious I mean that's when I really started being like I need to be consistent about it. Maybe not at the beginning. I was trying really hard to do every day, even if it was just 30 minutes, and that 30 minutes was painful, man. Just trying to get like 10, 15 to get a short story out by the end of the week was rough. um, and initially I was doing more of the fiction, and then as I started talking with people, it was I need to have a writer platform and all of that stuff, and meeting other writers and working with them, critiquing and helping their stories. I had some really good friends who kept pushing me in the direction of talking more about magic systems. And then I got to the point where I was doing way too much stuff. Um, and I have a presentation that I give at some conferences that's called Maintaining the Balance: How to Juggle Life, Friends, and Family While Pursuing the Career of Your Dreams, right? And I talk about this moment there, but I was doing way too much stuff. Even just on the writing side, I was trying to do my fiction. I was trying to submit short stories to magazines. I was working on my novel. I was doing a biweekly blog on magic systems. All of that content is still available on my website. And I was in a podcast with two of my good writing friends, which I think it has been taken down since because we didn't want to keep paying for the hosting. But if you can find any old snippets of Alive and Writing, that was a fun podcast. But I was doing way too much and getting nowhere on any of it, or progress was so slow, it was practically nothing. And it was very frustrating. So I came to the realization that I really needed to focus. And that's part of where Alive and Writing stopped. And at that point, I had to make a call between the fiction and the nonfiction. And I did some soul searching and came to a couple of conclusions. One, I did more searching online and just realized there is not other information about magic systems. If there is, it's the same 5 to 10 pieces of advice, just iterated over and over again, very briefly. So there is a dearth of information on magic systems. Most importantly, I enjoy helping people. I really enjoy helping people. It gives me a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment. And I just wanted to see more and cooler magic systems in fiction. I honestly didn't and still don't care if they're mine or not. And that was kind of the clincher, is like they don't have to be my magic systems. I just want to see more magic systems out there. So that was the point where I said, okay, I'm going to focus on the nonfiction now. And I do want to get back to fiction. That's probably not going to be an option until after I am able to quit the day job and switch to writing full time, which even then it's probably not going to be right away. There are some things I am exploring, like I'm looking at potentially doing a collaboration novel with some people, which would allow me to get involved with some fiction without it being as time consuming on my part. Not really much more I can say about that at this point yet. It's still very much up in the air. So that's how my stories are going. My main focus with the nonfiction is continuing to get the YouTube content out. And oh shoot, I lied to you guys earlier. I am planning to release this one on YouTube because things have been crazy, and I was going to use this in place of my regularly released content. Um, I am planning. Okay, all over the place. So nonfiction, I've got this stuff. I've got my newsletter, and I've got the video course that I'm working on that I want to get out soon-ish. I have no idea how long it's going to take. Um, but yeah, this one is going to stay up on YouTube. I am planning on doing other Q&As that will be Patreon or patron exclusive. Um, and that might be in a middle ground where I'm thinking um, it will be kind of like this one, where I will announce it to on YouTube. Anybody can attend, but then the recording will only be available on Patreon. Yeah, curious of your thoughts. Oh yeah, if you want to join my newsletter, you just go to my website, which is just crrowenson.com, and there should be a pop-up. If not, I can look. If not, shoot me an email or drop me a message in the comments of this video if you can't find it, and I can provide a link straight to my newsletter page. So that was a very long, rambling answer to how are your stories going? uh, oh, awesome! Yeah, I will. I will let Rachel know that you might be using some of those ideas. Uh, Sounds like I spend more time working on our stories than that is true, but part of that is because what I'm doing is freelance coaching, so I'm hired to help people with their magic systems, and I don't regret any of it. Absolutely love it. And the YouTube stuff, while it is time consuming, has been fantastic. Uh, I I really have enjoyed this form of teaching and communication, um, and I am continually looking for ways to improve, ways I can make my videos more engaging and interesting. If it's like animation effects or more drawings or more examples, like I really enjoy this, and I don't know, maybe it's just because I like to hear myself talk. Who knows? Um, but yeah, at the moment, I get my fix for fiction through you guys. You're my vicarious exploration of writing and storytelling. Do I have any other products like the Deck of Worlds and Cthulhu cards that I would recommend? Um, yes, stand by. So as you guys can see back here, so if you weren't aware, the story engine, the guy who did the story engine, Peter Tchaikovsky, did another one recently. This is the Deck of Worlds, and let me make sure I am. This is the Deck of Worlds. It's very similar to the story engine where you have the mini decks and you draw randomly and lay stuff out. Except this is designed. Oh, you got to see my mess that I was hiding with the box. The secret's out. Um, that is designed for helping you with world building and building micro settings and building maps and campaigns and stuff like that. So that is one that I definitely recommend. And yeah, I can definitely drop a link. That is my website. Um, I could drop the one to my newsletter. I would just have to scrounge for it a little bit. I should probably bookmark it, honestly. Um, and so, Deck of Worlds is one that I would recommend. Cthulhu has a second deck out that's really kind of just an expansion. It explores some other archetypes and other concepts. It has some more things that have been added into it. There's something called Rory's Story Cubes. So we're a little over, but hang on. I'm nerding out, and we're gonna talk a little bit, and hopefully this won't cause any problems with my schedule for today. Okay, so Rory's Story Cubes. Let me open this up. I have a whole bag of them. So what these are is they're these little cubes. Come on. That have these images on them. And the idea is for you to roll the cubes and then arrange them to tell stories. This was actually the first tool I ever discovered or that I ever really used for idea generation and that kind of stuff. There's a whole bunch of them. The blue ones I have here, I think, are the action ones. There's a mini set that these purple ones that are like mysteries. Um, so like you've got a little DNA symbol, or you've got a safe, um, or blood splatter, and kind of just rolling these randomly to see what pops up, and trying to make connections off of that can be a lot of fun. Then the other thing that I would recommend is the games by Lame Mage Productions. I will drop a link to that. So these aren't specifically creativity tools. They're really fun and they're really powerful. He has two games uh, that Ben Robbins made, which if you play a lot of D&D and if you've ever heard of West Marches, um, same guy. Apparently, I didn't know that. I knew Microscope and Kingdom first, but they are what he calls fractal storytelling, meaning it's easier for you to zoom in and out, and they're they're really hard to explain quickly. Just trust me, they're awesome. And those are a great way if you don't have ideas for story, playing a game of Microscope will get you a whole bunch of them. So I played a game with some friends of mine. Two of the players, myself included, were GMs. And by the time we were done, we were like, oh, this could be a game campaign, and this could be a game campaign, and this could be a game campaign. Because like the story seed that we started with was something along the lines of um, the Earth has become the hub for a new Eden. It was something like that. So then through Microscope, we had this huge saga where there was the discovery of magic, and that led to pollution and near destruction of our world, which led to an age of magical analysis and restriction, where people created these laws of magic, and the laws were actual manifested autonomous beings. So one of them was called schism, and that was the law of magic, that you shall not create portals through and between worlds. So schism went around was an embodiment of this law that both made it harder for people to do that kind of magic and would hunt down and eradicate existences of that magic. And then that sprawled into this whole thing of there was a rebellion against this order, and we left the age of restriction, but some of the tenets were still in place, and schism became a main antagonist for a series where people had to eventually bind him and alter him because they couldn't destroy him. And that's Microscope. It's a wild ride. I fully recommend it. Okay, so I can do one more question, and then I should probably go before I just talk to you guys forever. Uh, so I'm already trying to figure out changing of a name of necromancy. A cult came to mind, but it does not sound academic enough. Um, so yeah, Vita might be good, or maybe they change it from necro, which is focused on dead, to something that's more talking about body. So corpus might be a good one, um, or things that are talking about muscle or tissue, or things like that might be a way to go. Or it could just be that they come up with with a fancy name where it's like, no, this isn't necromancy. This is this is the magic of animation, and it's easily confused because the easiest thing to animate is an undead body for a whole variety of reasons, possibly because the structure is there. But it's not necromancy. It is the magic of animation. Uh, like that could be a whole thing. So it's not just zombies; it's also golems and constructs and things like that. And so uh, having that either broadening or narrowing definition where necromancy led into this kind of stuff would be great. Okay. Um, okay, really got to wrap it up here. So thank you all so much for being here, and thank you guys for being so active in the chat. Um, and I know I said this last time. I do want to do more of these. It's just going to be figuring out how. It sounds like probably I just need to give you guys enough heads up is my main problem. Is I think one time I did it and I just didn't give people enough heads up. Uh, So yeah, I will try and do these more. So start thinking of questions now for the next one. Um, and yeah, so thank you guys for being here. And as always, just make sure that whatever you do, that you keep writing and you stay awesome. Bye, guys.